Simon, can you give us a recap of what we've learned so far in the various sessions we've done?
We've talked about the risks associated with cybersecurity in the digital transformation era and the challenges that presents us. We've looked at the principles of the solution around Secure by Design from NTT. We talked about the process under which a client or an organization would experience Secure by Design. And we've talked about the solution itself.
And what can we look forward to in this final session?
We're going to talk about the human factor associated with being secure by design.
Well, let's look at the human factor. How can we protect ourselves against the human element of this?
As you know, the prevention of threats relies on us as humans whilst we go through this transformation to a possibly automated and or programmable future where it's all machine to machine communicating and talking. We are still dealing with the fact that there is an individual that needs to make a configuration or a policy change within their security domain and functions to protect the organization. That will be based on taking alerts or information or from a service provider, providing them the right information to make the right changes, or even a service provider like NTT providing that change themselves. And what we find and experience is that it still does bring into question the human factor is still a risk. If they don't make the right configuration change at the right time and or miss the email that messages the latest threat or keylogger or remote Trojans that are going on as part of the malware that's out there, then potentially they expose an organization to risk.
And you've highlighted a big issue here, which is of course the future. You know, we are working really hard to keep up with the saboteurs, as we referred to them earlier on. How can we ensure that we do stay keeping ahead when it comes to cybersecurity, and we are ahead of the criminals? What can we do to future-proof what we're doing?
There's several, market changes and market forces occurring. You know, as we talked about the sort of borderless connectivity, the complexity of architecture, there's a lot of a change to move to more programmable infrastructure where machines talk to machines, and ultimately there's an authentication of a machine to a machine or a machine to a user, for example. The way in which we're going to stay up to speed or in front of that will be deploying technologies like SOAR. SOAR is around bringing in automation within your security operations so that the machines can speak to the machines and the machines can make the updates based on alerts or events or intelligence that they receive.
One of the problems when it comes to humans is there's such a volume that we're looking at here. How can they possibly cope with it?
You're absolutely right. The number of events and alerts, and we deal with about 7 trillion logs a year from our 3,000 customers in the security services business unit. And within that area, the just pure volume is now out of control to the point where we have to introduce some element of machine learning to do that analysis. And I can give you a very true example here where my assistant received an email from me, or suspectedly from me, asking her to approve and raise a requisition order for a payment into Hong Kong for some third-party company. And it was now so sophisticated, it even referenced that I'd spoken to my boss and the boss's name was in there, and it told her to go ahead with it. And the only way we came about knowing it was what they call a spear phishing, so a very targeted email attack and impersonation, was that I actually was getting text messages from my assistant to say, "You sure you really want to approve this?" And I didn't know what she was referring to. So I then got into the office, we opened up our laptops, and apparently I'd been sending emails and corresponding backwards and forwards on various times. And when we opened up the sent messages to the inbox, there was definitely no correlation of me even communicating. I even had to doubt myself at some point. So we went upstairs, we went to the Security Operations Center, they looked into it, and there was this impersonation where they'd even got a genuine purchase requisition number within the email, and there was this whole communication flow going back between my assistant and this machine and or individual at the back end of this, trying to get this money extracted and paid to this third-party organization in Hong Kong. Very, very serious, but it even extends to all of us are not so well versed in cybersecurity. So what happens is that we're clicking on links and that's generating alerts, and that link, for example, may take you to a website. That website creates an alert within the DNS domain, security domain, or the website domain. It may also create an alert in the email security domain. And those numbers of alerts are just increasing. We now have to respond so fast that actually we've got to put machine learning into the way in which we respond to threats and or protect ourselves from threats.
And it's quite interesting you talk about machine learning, because that's very much an area that's being developed massively at the moment. Fast forward a bit, what are we looking about in the future? You know, how can we ensure that we are staying ahead of the game here, that we're not lagging even further behind the criminals? What are you doing and what are you putting into place to make sure that you are effectively future-proofing your operation?
With NTT, we bring a lot of the machine learning. As I referred to in some of the earlier sessions, we do this analysis on the dark web. We take all of that analysis into our algorithms or our AI that updates and constantly updates on real-time our threats prevention services. That allows us to stay ahead of the threats as much as possible and to get to what they refer to as 0 day, or proactive support. Proactive defense, What we're trying to do now is to work with our technology partners, and we have about 57 core technology partnerships where we bring together our services and our skills and expertise with their technology expertise to try and bring them together as secure by design solutions. And that may be for the secure branch, for example, or secure employee, where we wrap their technologies with our services, with a business process in a complete end-to-end solution. By bringing in machine learning as well from our algorithms that we track and trace, we allow then the customers to deal with the volume of events that they're experiencing, focusing just on the real threats that matter to, again, a previous session around risk profiling and protecting the things that really matter to the organization.
What exactly do you mean by machine learning in this context?
I mean by machine learning is that we are learning from behaviors that we're seeing and experiencing through maybe machine-to-machine or human-to-machine interactions. And from that, we update code. That code then spots a trend. That allows us to not have to rely on doing that activity again from scratch, because it's already spotted a trend between a machine-to-machine or a machine-to-human interaction, whether that be IP addresses or interactions between various network architectures or infrastructure architectures that operate together.
Given the need for machine learning just to be able to keep up, where does that leave the human element? What kind of skills are they going to need in the future to be able to work with machine learning?
There's a skill shortage in general across the cybersecurity industry, and it starts at the education level. We haven't really made cybersecurity interesting enough at the education level to drive people towards it as a career or an aspiration of a future, for example, but it is becoming more and more necessary. And if you look at some of this particular areas like application security, for example, really understanding that there is what they refer to as SAST, which is source code application security testing, or DAST, which is dynamic application security testing. And what that means is that you really look at the code level vulnerabilities as you're writing code in an application, or looking at when a code has been written and how it runs as an application, those vulnerabilities. That area of skills and how that operates within the cloud and understanding cloud protocols and environments. As we know, there are multiple big name cloud providers out there, and so is NTT as one of those providers. Those skill shortages are right now because this is accelerating as an industry change. Everyone's making this transition to a hybrid cloud environment, cloud security protocols, and into secure applications and DevSecOps. We just need to build out that awareness and I think drive that into education. And we're trying to do that through attracting diversity into the security industry, really looking at how we bring women into cyber. And we ran some various awards, like Women in Cybersecurity Awards, to try and raise the awareness of it, to attract more people from different backgrounds into cybersecurity. Makes it interesting.
What you're talking about is an incredible skill set that someone needs. How long does that take?
Oh, it's a tremendous amount of time. Normally, cybersecurity people evolve from, traditionally anyway, network engineers. So a network engineering course would take maybe 3-4 years. Then to really train as a level 3 sort of security operations center analyst, the best of the best in terms of really finding the needle in the haystack, correlating multiple different alerts and events and incidents to find the real threat, takes another 4 years, 5 years even in some cases. Our threat detection experts, our L3s, they have been through 5 years of training on top of whatever their education was before. It does take a lot of time.
We've talked a lot about the cybersecurity environment, the rapid change that's taking place and what we have to do to be ahead of the criminals. For maybe key decision makers who are watching this series of interviews, what would you like them to remember?
I'd like them to remember that cybersecurity is no longer a technology issue or a governance, risk and compliance issue. It's now core to the boardroom strategy or the business's strategy of delivering their outcome, because it is now about business continuity. It's about making sure that everyone is a student of cyber across the organizations, non-technical to technical. It's about making sure that you are covering your regulatory responsibilities, or you're concerned about your personal data or your clients' data, that you don't get breached and they have reputational damage which can impact your revenue or your stock valuation, for example. This is now really at the highest level, and bringing cybersecurity and how NTT addresses that through the Secure by Design at the board level and taking it to the core of their strategy.
As you say, it's never been more important to fully get to grips with cybersecurity and make sure that we do stay ahead. So it's been great finding out more. Simon Chasser from NTT, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Alistair.